Rev it up and welcome to Cars Yeah, show number 2330. Today we're going to get very technical in regards to Formula One race cars. So buckle up and be prepared to be inspired.
This is Cars Yeah, where you'll enjoy interviews with inspiring automotive enthusiasts. Mark Green is here to provide you with a fuel injection of automotive inspiration. So get in, sit down, buckle up, and get ready for a wild ride here on Cars Yeah.
Hello, inspiring automotive enthusiasts, and welcome to Cars Yeah. I'm back across the pond today, a place I visit quite often in the UK with a very special guest by the name of Steve Rendle. Steve, welcome to Cars Yeah. Do you have any gear, and are you ready to release the clutch?
I am ready to release the clutch. Thank you, Mark. Good to meet you.
Yeah, well, good to meet you too. And this is a guy who knows how clutches work and everything else in automobiles. And we're going to be talking about the technology in Formula One today. But before we start, I always ask my guests this. One little thing that you could share that most people don't know about you, Steve.
Well, I had to think hard, and I was trying to think of something with an automotive theme, and I decided that when I was younger, one of my passions, well, still is, was aviation and aircraft, as well as cars. Oh, yeah. Often seems to be the case. And so I could actually fly a glider solo before I was allowed to drive a car.
Oh, wow.
Solo, which always amused me because that just seems like a strange situation.
Oh, how beautiful. You know, I grew up in Southern California, and above Black's Beach, Torrey Pines there, was a glider port. And we used to go up there and watch the cars would drive towards the edge of the 300-foot cliff with a cable and launch the gliders. And you could go for rides in gliders. Always looked beautiful. They also had the people that would do the hang gliding off the cliff there, you know.
Yes, I know, yeah.
Coincidentally, the day we're recording this show, my guest on Cars Yeah, the day we're recording, is Jordan Smith. His call sign is Joker. He's an Air Force pilot. And one of the things that he pilots is these drone craft that are huge airplanes that go out and fly without people on them, you know, on the other side of the planet. But still, you've got to have some technical prowess and be able to fly. He's flown regular aircraft before too. So interesting timing that we're talking about aircraft today.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. And I guess, you know, to fly drones, if you're a pilot, qualified pilot, that's going to help, isn't it? Because you just have the reflexes, you know exactly what's going on. So yeah, a bit different to a glider though. But I think it was relatively tame compared with drones, I think.
Well, I would think so. They call these things Reapers. And they fly halfway around the world. Well, you know, go on missions and so forth. And the technology is mind-bending. But that's what we're going to talk about today is some pretty mind-bending technology that you're involved in. So let me give you an introduction here. Steve Rendle is a freelance writer and editor with a passion for all things featuring engines, wheels, wings, and in particular, Formula One cars. He's the author of Evro Publishing's book titled Formula One Technology, The Engineering Explained. His early interest in F1 was ignited by seeing John Watson win the British Grand Prix at Silverstone back in 1981. His strong interest in engineering and hands-on vehicle maintenance resulted in him working for Haynes Publishing, those car folks of us all know about Haynes, for many, many years, initially researching, editing, and writing car repair manuals, and later commissioning, editing, and, when the time allowed, writing motorsports books, in addition to titles covered by other subject areas. He competed in several seasons of hill climbing and sprinting laterally with a self-built Ford Pinto-powered Westfield, very interesting, and he has been a member of the Guild of Motoring Writers for over 20 years. We're going to learn a lot more about Steve and this new book and about F1 cars, but first a word from our sponsors, so give them a little love and we'll be right back. Years ago, when it was time to renew my collector car insurance policy, my carrier's rates went up. Way up, but my usage was the same and I never made a claim. I didn't even have a ticket. So what's with that? So I turned to American Collectors Insurance. Has your collector car insurance recently raised your rates for no good reason? Tired of paying an annual membership fee? Then it's time to look around and call American Collectors Insurance. I shopped around, I asked friends for recommendations, and found a winner that I can trust. And boy, I'm glad I did. I saved hundreds of dollars every year and slept better at night knowing my baby was properly insured. American Collectors Insurance have been protecting vehicles since 1976. They provided me with an agreed value insurance policy backed by their history of taking great care of their clients. What could be better than that? So give them a call and ask for a quote today. 866-ACI-YEAH. That's 866-224-9324. And protect the ones you love like I did with American Collectors Insurance. Classic car insurance designed by collectors for collectors. Did you know that Cars Yeah! Is in the top 1% of all podcasts based on listenership according to Libsyn, the premier RSS feed for podcasts in the United States? That's right. Plus, DuPont Registry recommended Cars Yeah! Is one of their top 10 car podcasts for you to enjoy. Cars Yeah! Has experienced tremendous growth, plus your ads are evergreen, meaning they never go away. And more listeners find Cars Yeah! Every day for their daily dose of automotive inspiration. Do you want to expose your brand to a highly targeted list of automotive enthusiasts in a very unique and very personal way? Well, I can help you. Contact me, Mark Green, at mark@carsyeah.com or through the website at carsyeah.com today to learn more. If your car started today, well, thank a tech. If that truck delivering your goods today got to your home or your business, thank a tech. If that airplane you rode in took off and landed safely, and if that boat you're riding in arrived at the dock safe and sound, that's right, thank a tech. One thing the pandemic has taught us is that great techs keep America rolling. They are essential workers and we need them. Support career and technical education by getting involved with TechForce Foundation. It's a Cars Yeah! Charity of choice. Learn more at techforce.org today. So, Steve, we are back. So we're going to dive a little deeper in the corner, actually real deep into the corner, and talk about Formula One, take some laps, enjoy some technical sides of this incredible sport. But before we do, I want you to kind of bring us up to speed on how you got to where you are here, because as I mentioned, you are a mechanic, you know how things work. So how did your life transpire up into what you're doing today? Where did this all begin?
Well, I guess my father was always a car fanatic, an airplane fanatic, anything mechanical. And I think that part of it's in my genes. And I grew up in late 70s, early 80s, when if you had a car as a young person, you had to maintain it yourself. They're really, people didn't have the money to go out and just take things to a shop, to a garage. So we had to do it ourselves. My dad taught me how to maintain my first car, which was quite a nasty English car, actually, called an Austin Allegro, very ancient thing, quite basic. It had a Austin A series engine, which was the engine that went in the Mini. And I just learnt to maintain it. It went wrong quite a lot, as cars of that era tended to do. And I learnt how to fix it. And I think from that, I just gained this curiosity to try and find out how things worked. So the usual things through the education system, and I decided that I'd love to get into cars and engineering and really motorsport, because that became a passion alongside the road cars, again inherited from my dad really, who, as I think you mentioned earlier, took myself and my brother along to Silverstone way back 1981, and we saw our first Grand Prix, and I think I was just awestruck by the spectacle, the noise primarily, and the colour of it all and the excitement. And that really hooked me onto, Formula One, because that was my first real experience of car racing, and then motorsport generally. So when I finished at school, I went to do a course in engineering at what actually then wasn't called university in the UK. It was a polytechnic, mechanical engineering. And if I'm honest, I found I loved the engineering, but the mathematics was a huge challenge for me. So I did the first year of that course, and I carried on and did lots of practical coursework, which was all part of it, because it was one of those courses where you go for a year and learn the theory, and then you go into industry or practical college for a year. So I did that, and I came back and thought, hey, I'm not going to excel at engineering in terms of being able to design and build racing cars, which is what I wanted to do. So let's change track and find another way to get into motorsport. So I finished with that, and I got a job actually partly because I'd done that course with Evro Publishing. Yeah, and it was great. It was the heyday of that particular company. There were a lot of manuals being produced, and it's exciting cars around. And I started right at the sort of very bottom. Really, I was collating research material for the authors at that time to write the car repair manuals, which I think you know well in the US as well, and they were big in the UK at that time. So I started with them and sort of progressed okay over a period of time, and in I think 3 or 4 years I was editing, and then had an opportunity to actually write some of those books. And yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed that because I enjoy learning about mechanical things, as I mentioned previously, and that gave me a great chance to start looking at current cars and literally pulling them to pieces with a mechanic and a photographer. We used to have a team of 3, and it was great learning something new every day. And that was the era when we were just about moving into fuel injection and emission systems. So it was the tail end of carburetors and pretty basic stuff by today's standards. Yeah, and then I carried on that track for probably nearly 10 years with the writing side of things for Haynes, and I also worked on a few books about other automotive subjects like air conditioning and paint refinishing, that kind of thing, putting books together to help people coming newly into those trades to find their feet and learn how the systems worked. And then an opportunity came along within the company to move over to the other divisions. So we had the division producing the car manuals and another side that worked on what I would say were more mass market motoring and motorsport books. So in other words, anything that wasn't a repair manual. And I took that opportunity. I was lucky to be offered it. And then that's how I moved on to the motorsport book side of things, and commissioning and editing and project managing motorsport and motoring book projects.
Nice evolution.
Yes, it was. Yeah, as I say, I was very fortunate. All that was going on within the company at the time. So I moved across. The people I worked with gave me some really good opportunities. And so from that, I was able to work with some really interesting people and projects in the motorsport and motoring world. Because I'd already had the experience of writing, albeit more instructional material, I had the opportunity to actually start writing a few books. And that was when I found I could combine those 2 areas. And so the first projects I wrote in that vein were actually about Formula One cars, the first books, actually explaining how they worked, researching the engineering and the history of the cars, etc. So that was great because I sort of was able to combine those 2 fields, and that they really took you behind the scenes of the team and the history of the car, and more importantly from my point of view, I suppose, the actual engineering. So talking to the guys who put those cars together and who ran them, and some of the drivers too, to get you kind of under the skin of those cars and find out how they worked and how they were run, how they were operated.
Very cool. Well, your book, as I read, demystifies the extraordinary technology in F1 cars by meticulously dissecting the F1 car. In your words, technical diagrams, you've got illustrations, photographs, and so forth. So let's talk a little bit about this. And one of the things I wanted to ask you was, when it comes to the inspiration of an F1 car from your side of your passion, going back to that racing adventure in 81, the first F1 race, and then your entire career, what is the most inspirational thing for you that you uncovered as you were writing this book about Formula One technology?
I think it's probably the dedication of the engineers and the incredible eye for detail. Nothing on those cars, no bolt, no radius on a curve of bodywork. Nothing is on those cars unless it's for a reason, and it's going to make the cars faster. And when you look at the detail and the number of hours that goes into the analysis and the design, the thought processes, it's incredible. And I think the only parallel I can really think of is the military aviation or space industry with that kind of attitude. And obviously, the budgets do help as well.
Yes.
And I think that is the case throughout motorsport, but particularly with Formula One. Sometimes you look at it and think, hang on, have we gone too far? But I do find that fascinating.
Yeah, well, no kidding. A few weeks ago, I had ex-Formula One racer Stefan Johansson on the show, and I asked him a question. I said, what is your opinion on the new EV cars? And he answered in a very unique way compared to many people, the way they answer. And he said, you know what? I'm not so sure the path they're going down is the right path. What they should just do is hire a bunch of Formula One engineers and experts and designers, give them 3 years, and they'll figure out what the best way and the most economical way to do this is. And I thought that was a really interesting answer to that question, because those guys have to figure out, as you said, incredible technology. They do it in a way, although it with a lot of money, but, when it comes to designing cars, it's expensive, that could come up with a better way that's a combination of powering vehicles, but also maybe what's best for the environment. So I thought that was a unique answer. And as you were walking through the different aspects, and I'll list off some things that are commonsensical here, but chassis, aerodynamics, suspension, transmission, electronics, engines, wheels, tires, car design, setup, and analysis. My gosh, you covered every aspect of this. Were there some areas that were really challenging?
Yes, I think the challenging thing is obviously you've got to understand the subject yourself within reason to be able to write about it. I don't profess to be an expert in any one of those areas that you just mentioned, but you sort of need an analytical mind to have that overview. But also I think, you try and put yourself in the position of somebody who's curious about how these things work. And so I kind of think of myself as being in quite a lucky position that I have the resource and I can research these things, figure out how it all works, because I don't just sit here knowing how it all happens. It's the research and finding out which is the most interesting part. So I've just always tried to put myself in the shoes of somebody picking this book up for the first time and thinking, well, what would I like to know? What are the things that maybe might seem really obvious to people close to the subject, but might not be obvious at all to somebody coming to this for the first time? And you've just got to try and do that without sort of patronizing people and just sort of trying to pitch it at the right level, which is quite tricky, but
no doubt.
That's what I try to do.
Yeah. So this leads to a nice segue for that comment. And it is, what was one of the most intriguing aspects of a Formula One car that you went, wow, I didn't even know that?
I think probably some of the gearbox technology that's used now, where basically the cars are continually under power. So they're actually engaging the next gear before the gear that is being used has been released.
Okay, wait a minute. What did you just say? They're engaging the gear before...
Yeah, a very, very clever system. The engineering is phenomenal. But essentially, you've got a ratio engaged as on any car, as on a road car. And obviously, when you take that car out of gear or lift off the throttle, you're going to lose momentum, lose speed.
Oh, okay. Now I see what yeah.
Yeah, so what they do with these cars, and it's not exclusive to Formula One, but it's Formula One that really switched me onto it. They're engaging, so say you're in third gear, they're actually going to engage fourth gear electronically via a system of clutches and very clever ball bearing and a sort of a lever clutch system. I can't really explain it without reading the book. And that gear is all ready to go. The previous gear disengages and there's no discernible break in that whatsoever. So the car is underpowered the entire time.
That's so cool. I never thought about it that way, but yeah, you're right. Because there's those just fractions of seconds that they don't want to lose any momentum. And now that the cars are basically sequential gearboxes, I guess, would that be the right way to describe the way they operate now? Yes,
these are sequential, but they're also seamless shifts. So there's literally no drop in power whilst they're shifting at all.
Is that technology been translated in any street cars?
I don't think it has, no. It has to other branches of motorsport, certainly, but I don't think any street cars. I could be wrong on that, but I'm not aware of any street cars that use that technology.
Well, you think of some of the, like, for instance, Porsche PDK and how seamless the shifting is on these cars, Ferrari street cars, the paddle shifters and all these things that are just so fast and, so easy, so smooth these days. quite interesting stuff. But yeah, the technology, I could see for someone like you that has so much experience looking at that and just going, oh my gosh, this is something else. Was there a category that I ran through that you covered of all these different things from chassis to suspension, aerodynamics, electronics, that was maybe even somewhat intimidating for you of how am I going to write about this so the common thought process person could understand this because it's so technical?
Well, I think probably aerodynamic, because that's a subject you could write several volumes on, and the deep understanding of that is something you need to really, really study probably for years. So I think, yes, it's quite challenging to give an overview and try and explain the reason for each of the components being there and also how all those components interact. Because certainly with Formula One, and I think probably IndyCar now too, aerodynamics is the dominating factor in being competitive. And so the amount of time and analysis, again, that's spent on aerodynamic is phenomenal. And that's the main drive, because it doesn't matter if you can have a great engine, fantastic driver. If the aerodynamics are not absolutely cutting edge, the car isn't going to win. And conversely, the slightest amount of damage, even down to having a visor, one of the driver's visor tear-offs, just come off and stick for a moment on the nose or on the wing. I mean, that can knock maybe a tenth, certainly hundredths, maybe a tenth or more off a lap time.
Wow.
So it is mind blowing, and the aerodynamicists, the aerodynamics teams, they are very clever people. I think they're just thinking on a different plane to most of us with the analysis they can do.
Right. I can't even imagine. Was there one aspect of putting this book together that was your favorite?
I think probably the engine side of things. Mm-hmm. Because I've always loved engines and finding out how they work and the noise they make, to be honest. And so, today in F1, you've got hybrid cars with a 1.6 litre turbo internal combustion engine and then a hybrid system. And those two are designed as an integral unit by the engine manufacturers. So we've got 4 engine manufacturers in Formula One. And I think that's another aspect of F1. You've got 10 different teams and you've got 4 engine manufacturers, and you've got the set of rules and they're fairly tightly defined. But when you think that's 10 sets of engineers, 10 big teams of people, and then the 4 engine manufacturers, and despite all that and the different paths to their solutions, the cars are still lapping within fractions of a second of each other.
It's incredible, isn't it? When you think, I always thought about that, thinking, okay, this is maybe not going back to the days of Can-Am or some of the wild, let's say, turbo engines of Formula One, where you got, V6s and 8s and 4s, and they still ran so close. But now they're all within just fractions of seconds. It's incredible.
Yeah, it is. And people talk now about the big gap, particularly this year in Formula One, between the speed of the Red Bull and the other teams. But you're still only talking generally about less than a second.
The big
yes,
gap.
Of course, in motorsport terms, that is a lot. But you sit in your road car, and if you can drive a car consistently within a second around any sort of circuit, you're already a very, very good driver.
Right. Yeah. It's just amazing. When you look ahead to your bucket list, is there a book in this area that you'd like to write in the future?
Well, I think I'd like to keep abreast of what's going on in Formula One and maybe take this book forwards and update it in a few years' time. Because looking back at the introduction, the early chapters in this book, the first chapter talks about the history of F1 technology and how we've got to where we are today. And I just wonder where we'll be in another 5, certainly 10 years, who knows? I guess we won't have internal combustion engines by then, most probably.
Probably not. Yeah, unfortunately, we'll lose that wonderful sound, but there'll be things that will pick up, I would guess, and it'll probably be mind-bending speeds. I think these drivers are going to have to start wearing G-suits like pilots do.
Yes. They certainly need to have a darn good workout. I mean, I think the neck muscles for modern single-seater and sports car drivers, I mean, goodness, I think the forces are incomprehensible to most of us.
Yeah. People that say, "Oh, race car drivers aren't athletes," I say, "Well, you get in that car just as a passenger and try to not pass out when they go through a corner.
Yes.
Probably not going to happen." I love to share stories about my guests' personal lives and cars. And I wondered if you could share a special vehicle in your life and a story about that ride. Maybe it's the Austin Allegro, or maybe it's something a little better. I don't know.
I think it has to be something a little better.
Yeah.
Yes, I've had a car called a Westfield, which is, people may not know what that is, but it's a British a take on the Lotus 7 Caterham car.
Yeah.
Which is a very, very basic 2-seater sports car. No roof, no windows, no doors, no boots, just 2-seat, an engine at the front, rear-wheel drive, and very, very light. So it's probably about, I'm guessing, 1,500 pounds. And as a sort of 20-something-year-old, I was quite keen to go faster in cars. And I bought this car, this Westfield. It had been built by somebody else, because they are actually kit cars. So you buy the kit of parts and then put them together yourself. And at the time, that was quite expensive. So I bought the thing fully built. But I think it had been built probably by somebody who maybe hadn't done that before, and I'm thinking they probably scared themselves when they first got in it, because it's a very small, very, very quick car for the road. And so they sold it. I bought it, took it to pieces, and rebuilt it. And one of my first long journeys in it was actually with my girlfriend at the time, to drive up to Yorkshire in the UK, which is about 250 miles probably from where I live. And we took this car with all our camping kit, because we were camping under canvas, just strapped on the back of the roll bar with bungee cords. I'd taken my crash helmet, which was in the passenger compartment, on the floor. And we made it all the way up, and it was horrible weather, really, really nasty rain, cold. Put the tent up, went to the pub and had lunch, and we stayed there for 2 days, because it was at the venue was a hill climb course, which in the UK, hill climbs are sort of speed events for cars.
Right,
so you basically just go as fast as you can against the clock over a usually very narrow and windy course. And this one was through a farmyard, which was quite exciting. Went there and came home, and I thought, well, that's it. I've blown this relationship.
Well, I was going to ask, did she go out with you again after that?
Well, she's been my wife for nearly 25 years.
Well,
now,
there
so
you go. You found the right lady, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
Wow. Yeah, not too many. I'm not sure too many women would want to do that again. That wasn't much fun, especially in that kind of weather. Now, is that the car you sent me the picture of, the red one?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
That's right. Yes.
Okay. Well, you listeners will see a picture of this vehicle that he's talking about on Steve's show notes page in the Cars Yeah website. Those of you into cars know what he's talking about when you think about, of course, the Caterham or Lotus 7s and those cars. But I had the pleasure years and years ago driving a similar car on our local racetrack. And oh my gosh, those things feel like you're going twice as fast as you're going as well, just because of how low you are in the open top. Quite fun.
Yes, they're fabulous fun. The only thing is they can be quite scary driving them on the public roads in traffic sometimes. Because people just don't look. You're so low, people tend to not look down to find you.
Yeah,
that's
somebody
right.
in a big SUV would just run right over you. So not
you have to make more noise though to make yourself.
Yes. Open pipes, cut off the mufflers. Yes. That'll do it. So I'm going to be a car psychologist today. Crawl into your head. If you were manifest or reincarnated as a vehicle, what would you be and why?
That's a tricky one. I think something like probably what we have certainly in the UK, a Ford Focus ST, which is the sporty one.
Yeah.
Because it's a pretty straightforward car, nothing too flash, and I think it's sort of it's fairly practical, adaptable, and most people can just sort of get in the thing and drive it and get along with it. Not too extrovert, but fun if you want it to be, and you want to go quickly. Yeah,
okay. I see where you're going with that. That makes sense. Great fun.
I hope I can.
Great fun cars. Yeah, all sorts of things. If you want to go out and do some lapping days, you can have fun with that, or just going out to the backcountry, winding through some hillsides. So I love it very much. Now, of course, I always ask my guests about great books. And of course, the book we're talking about today is Steve's book, Formula One Technology, The Engineering Explained by Evro, our friends there. So we love that. I know that in recent years also, you've authored a couple Haynes manuals about super successful F1 cars, the Red Bull RB6, the Williams FW14B, and the McLaren MP4. That's a cool car back from the 80s. Those collaborations and those books, were those pretty fun, I would imagine, since you've been in love with Formula One racing since that first trip in 81?
Yeah, it was fantastic. I mean, I was like a kid in a sweet shop, really, with all those projects. And, you kind of... I grew up, I suppose, watching those cars, certainly the Williams and the McLaren in the 80s, and later the Red Bull, that was obviously later on 2010. And to have that opportunity to go and see those cars and meet the people, because sometimes it's easy to forget that, intertwined with motorsport and the speed and the spectacle, it's people that make it all happen. And so to meet those engineers and talk to them and hear their stories firsthand and have them explain things, it's absolutely fantastic. So yes, a privilege.
Well, I think that's why the Drive to Survive documentary they did was so successful, because it got back into the pits and into the people, whereas when people just watch racing, especially today, I mean, back in the old days, you could go down to the pits and see people and meet people. They were approachable. Now everything is at a distance. And when you can learn about the people and the drivers and the teams and the enormous amount of work versus just this vehicle going around, it's almost like without a human in it. It's so amazing. I think that's why the passion for that Drive to Survive series is so strong. I hope they continue to do that.
Yes, I think you're absolutely right. And I think it gives you that insight into what's actually going on, doesn't it? And I think the other thing you learn is that these people, although they're all brilliant at what they do, or they wouldn't be in that world, at heart, they're all really enthusiasts, and they're usually quite happy to share their thoughts and their views on things and the technology within reason, within bounds. Obviously, they can't tell you everything, but, it's like chatting to a mate most of the time. They're nice people.
Yeah, even if you don't know them. They want to share their passion. So let's go on the ultimate drive today. I'm going to be a benefactor. I'm going to park anything you'd like in your driveway. You can take it on a drive, and you can take anybody with you, even somebody from the past who's no longer with us, which opens up an enormous number of past drivers, racers, people, whomever. What does the ultimate drive look like for a guy like you?
Well, I think you mentioned the driver could be somebody different, so I kind of combined the two.
Okay.
And I figured probably Brian Johnson, the AC/DC frontman,
Okay.
because he's such a car enthusiast. I'm a rock fan, so I've always admired his work, so to speak. Probably in a Mustang GT500, something like that, something really brutal.
Okay.
A muscle car.
Yeah.
And I think if you could pick any driver in the world, and for me it would have to be a racing driver, then I'd go back and ask Ayrton Senna to get behind the wheel, I think, because he was one of my heroes. And I think, to experience his driving and his presence would be quite something.
Oh my gosh, what an interesting combination. Okay, you got really creative. Yeah, you got really creative with this. That's pretty darn cool. Yeah, Senna, a great guy. My listeners know this. I've got one of his quotes on my business card. Love that guy, watching that guy run, and just talk about passion. Oh my gosh. And another passionate guy, Brian Johnson. I'd like to get him on this show. I haven't been able to reach out to him or get to him yet, but I would love to have him on the show. I think it would be a great talk. Love their music as well. So yeah, loud cars, loud music, fast drivers.
Yes.
What could be better? What could be better? You've taken us on a wonderful ride today, Steve, and I can't thank you enough for calling in today, connecting with me. And I want to do a shout out thank you to our mutual friends at Evro, and also Judy Stropas, who put us together. Judy brings some wonderful people here to Cars Yeah. So Judy, you did it again. Before I let you go today, Steve, could you share some words of inspiration and wisdom, maybe a success quote or something that has meaning for you that we can share with our listeners?
Well, I think to sum things up and the work ethos, I think something my dad always used to tell me, and I don't think it was his quote originally, but that's where I got it from. And that's, if a job's worth doing, it's worth doing well. And I think that applies to any job in life and life generally. I think just give it your best and see what happens.
Yeah, if you're going to take the time, you might as well do it right. So, yeah, instead of having to go back and do it again.
Yes, exactly.
Or just doing, you're just doing, as they say, a piss poor job in walking away from it. So, yeah, great quote. It's a great thing for a dad to share with you. How can people learn more about you and your writing?
Well, you can find me on the Evro Publishing website, and I'm also on Facebook and LinkedIn.
Great. Okay.
And that's probably the best way.
All right. I'll put links to LinkedIn, Facebook, and of course, our friends at Evro, their publishing site for Steve, so you can reach out and learn more about what he's written and look ahead to things that are coming down the road as well. Steve, thanks for being so generous today with your time and expertise and sharing your world. And thanks for making F1 a little more understandable for us basic folks out here that find it so complicated. I'm right there with you on the math side. My wife was a mathematical, well, she still is. She likes to do math puzzles for fun. Makes me cringe. Yeah. She was an engineering major in school when we were in college and is super, super smart in that way. But my brain just doesn't work that way. I can't quite open that door, but anyway.
No, you and I both, I think. I'm just not quite wired that way, I don't think.
No, yeah, everybody's wired a little differently. Well, until you and I talk again, my friend, I'll see you down the road.
Thank you, Mark. A pleasure to talk to you. Thanks very much.
You're welcome. This was great fun.
Thank you so much for joining us on today's ride here at Cars Yeah. Drive on over to carsyeah.com to find show notes and inspiring automotive fun. Download your free copy of Filler Up, a fun book filled with gorgeous photographs of fuel filler fun, including quotes from more inspiring automotive enthusiasts. Download your copy today, and we'll see you next time on Cars Yeah.